Alright guys, hopefully you can read this well enough, but it's been a little while since I've made a video, and I'd like to make some announcements about some changes to the channel. So basically I want to make a new series. It was sort of suggested to me by some people on social media, etc., that they would like to see a zero to hero kind of video series on how to manage Linux servers. So what I've done here is I put together a video list, and you can see on the left here it's split out into beginner and advanced videos, which is basically what I'm going to end up doing. I'm going to have 3 different playlists essentially. There's going to be a beginner playlist and an advanced playlist, and then there's going to be a complete series playlist. So the beginner playlist is going to be focused on the desktop and the GUI, and that's what it's going to be. It'll be more from a novice Linux user, maybe a user who's trying to switch over from Windows and wants to know what to expect, or if they even should, maybe, that sort of thing. It's going to be targeted at very, very novice users who just want to get a handle on how to do some basic things that they're probably used to doing in Windows and find out what the equivalents are in Linux. And in this case specifically, Debian. So this entire series, as with most things on my channel, is going to be a Debian focused series. So the entire thing will be from the Debian perspective. And it will have support for other distros kind of by proxy. And that's not necessarily because I don't like other distributions or that I have anything against other distributions. It's just simply that I know Debian better than any other distribution. It is my distro of choice. So that's why I'm going to talk about it from that perspective, because it's the perspective that I personally know best. It's also a very good free distribution that has a reputation for being rock solid stable. So it's a fantastic distribution to get your feet wet with. It's also not exactly known for being completely newbie friendly, which I kind of don't really agree with. I think it's fine. But there is an argument that there are other distributions out there that are more new, user friendly. And I guess I could agree with that statement. But to say that Debian is not user-friendly or is not friendly to new users, well, I think that's debatable. Having said that, though, I want to target users who are complete newbies to try and get them to have a good experience with Debian, because I think if people use Debian, and they have a good experience because they came at it from an informed perspective and they actually had some help, it would be a positive experience for them, and then they would continue to use and like Debian, or at the very least some Linux distribution out there. I also want to clarify that this is not necessarily a series to tell you why you should switch to Linux or that Linux is somehow better than Windows. I hold my own opinion of that. I personally believe that Linux is what I would choose. I don't use Windows anymore, although I have used Windows in the past, and I have been a Windows systems administrator for a long time. I've also administrated Macs and even some Unix systems. So I've got a wide level of experience, and I can tell you firsthand that Linux is definitely my preferred platform for both the desktop and the server and laptops and pretty much anything it'll run on. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but we're going to save that for some of the other videos. The point is that I want to make this series to help people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into sort of what each video will target, what I'm going to talk about in each one, so you guys kind of get an idea of what you can expect from the series, and hopefully come at me with some comments and some criticisms and some thoughts and opinions on what I should do, what I should maybe try to target, if there's anything you want me to expand on, or if you think I'm overdoing it, just give me your perspective on what you want to see from the series, because that may very well shape the direction I choose to take. So you might notice the complete series has videos that are duplicates of the videos over here. that is the case. So the complete series is a merger between these two playlists here. So the reason they're broken out is the beginner series, again, should target beginners, and it should be desktop and GUI focused. There will be videos that will touch on or be command line centric, but they can be safely skipped. At least that's the goal. I want to make it so that all the videos in the series, with the exception of the one that's number 4 here, called very basic command line introduction, all other videos past that will be, you'll be able to follow along without knowing the command line. So if you want to be command line, if you're command line shy or command line adverse and don't want to touch it at all, you should be able to complete the desktop series, skipping maybe the very basic command line introduction, although I encourage everyone to watch that and try to learn some of it, because you're really missing out if you don't at least mess with the command line a little bit. It's so very powerful. But I do want to offer the GUI perspective on it. And for the GUI perspective, I want to clarify that I will be focusing on both GNOME and KDE. GNOME I'll be using because it is the Debian default, so if you literally just click through the installer prompts and just tell it go, it's going to install GNOME. So that's what you get by default. But I don't know if you can really consider any desktop the default desktop of Debian anymore, because they all seem very well supported, and it's really easy to just check KDE and then you'll get a KDE desktop. KDE happens to be my desktop of choice, and it is also a very popular desktop interface environment that you can use. So it will also target KDE as well. Apologies to anybody using XFCE, LXDE, Awesome Window Manager, Cinnamon, Mate, whichever you want to say there. I think it's Mate. I don't know the correct pronunciation of that one. But Budgie, any of the other desktop interface environments, window managers, whatever. I wish I could cover every single one, but that's a little bit difficult to do, so I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. But I will try to cover the two big ones, which are GNOME and KDE. And hopefully that will cover everything else. And anybody who's using, say, Awesome Window Manager or i3 or any of those other crazy ones out there, hopefully you guys are all smart enough to extrapolate what I'm trying to say. And if you're using those window managers, especially something like Awesome or i3 or any of the more advanced ones, you probably don't need the beginner series of videos anyway. But anyway, let's talk about what's going to be in these videos. So the introduction video is this. So I'm going to go through on this side because this one has them all in sort of chronological order of how I'm going to actually hopefully upload these things. So the introduction video is this video, so you can ignore that one because that one's kind of already done, hopefully. And then we're going to talk about switching to Linux. And we're going to briefly discuss what Linux is, what a distribution is, get you familiar with some of the terminology, what you can expect, how to manage your expectations, who should consider switching, who's a good candidate, that sort of thing. Hopefully that helps some people determine maybe if Linux is right for them, what they can expect from Linux, maybe what distribution they should choose, although I am absolutely not going to be trying to pull people into any specific distribution of Linux in that video, but maybe that'll give you some insight on things. Of course, in order to follow along with this video completely, you should probably be using Debian, although a Debian derivative like Ubuntu or Mint or Solid XK, any of them out there, it doesn't matter. You should, in theory, be able to follow along pretty easily. The big differentiator being if you're using something like Unity in Ubuntu, then obviously the GNOME and KDE interface things are not going to apply to you at all. So maybe Kubuntu or something like that instead. Anyway, after that, we're going to do a Why Debian video, which is just going to talk about my perspective on Debian, what I see in it, why I use it, and why I think it's pretty great. It's not to diss other distributions. I absolutely love other distributions and their contributions towards the Linux community. It's just why I chose Debian as my personal go-to. That's it. It is safely skippable if you guys don't want to watch that for whatever reason. It will not be a practical demonstration. The very first practical demonstration in the series where I'll actually pull up a console or a terminal or any kind of visual follow-along thing will be the fourth video in the series, which should be the basic beginner installation video. So this video is basically going to walk you through installing Debian Linux. It'll show you how to get the ISO, how to install it. It will give you a more in-depth perspective, though, than I think a lot of other videos out there, because I think a lot of other videos tend to gloss over some aspects of the installer, such that I think certain people don't know certain things about the installer that I think they maybe should. So we're going to talk about all that kind of stuff, how to properly partition your setup, that sort of thing in that video. Again, it'll be from a GUI perspective, so we'll use the graphical installer. And in fact, we'll probably even use the graphical installer on the advanced video too, because why not? In that video, we'll go into more advanced installation techniques and topics, such as installing a CLI environment only, which is command line interface for those of you who don't know. Command line interface, so GUI is graphical user interface, CLI is command line interface. We're going to talk about the command line interface installation, so we're basically going to come up to a blinking cursor, and that's about it. And that, if you're doing a server, is what you probably should be doing. And a brief note on servers versus desktops in Debian Linux. So in the Windows world, we're familiar with having a Windows desktop. So like Windows 10, for instance, is a desktop Windows operating system. On the other hand, in the server world, we have Windows Server 2012, 2012 R2, 2016, I believe is the new one. Whatever. We have a server edition of Windows. Even with Red Hat, we have Red Hat Workstation, and then we have server editions of Red Hat. We have corporate editions of different Linux distributions out there. That's a pretty common theme. Debian does not work this way. You do not need a special distribution or a particular branch of Debian in order to run a server environment. What makes Debian a server is that you install server packages on Debian. What makes Debian a desktop is that you install desktop GUI-based packages on Debian. But your Debian is the same Debian that I downloaded when I downloaded Debian. They are not better than one another. You can't pay more money and get an enterprise Debian. It doesn't work that way. Debian is Debian. And it's one of the things I love about Debian. So the fact that I've broken the desktop and the server categories up like that might come across confusing. The reason why I've done that is the stuff on the desktop side that's GUI focused is generally stuff that you would do on a desktop system. That does not mean that it's not necessarily applicable to the server side. You just drop the GUI and do it all in the command line. So it is absolutely possible to watch the videos in the complete series list order, in the ordered list in the complete series, and they will all make sense and be applicable to Debian as a whole. It just depends on what perspective you're coming at the system. I've broken it out this way so that an advanced user can say, well, I don't really need the desktop stuff, I'm only interested in advanced server stuff. So they could say, well, maybe I'll skip to the command line, or start watching from from logical volume management and storage, and then pick up wherever they want. It's set up that way so that users can basically hit the play button on the playlist and watch the advanced series or the beginner series, or if they're interested in the whole series, they can just push play on the complete series and watch the whole thing. So anyway, once we get done with the installers, which the advanced installer again will touch on advanced installation topics such as installation automation, command line installation, maybe managing LVM, maybe setting up Lux for encryption, that sort of thing. I'll talk about a lot of different things in that I'll be skipping over in the basic one. And then we're going to do a basic introduction into the command line. This will be in our desktop series because I think everybody should have some mild exposure to the command line. You should at least know what it is and some of what it's capable of. But we're not going to get super in-depth there. So after that, we're going to do installing software updates, including proprietary non-free drivers and firmware. And that seems like kind of a big, long, scary sentence there. It's really not. Basically, the gist of it is how do you install software in Linux? How do you perform system updates? How do we get the proprietary NVIDIA driver for our NVIDIA card? How do we make sure our Wi-Fi is working on our laptop? That video will show you all of those things, and it'll do it from a GUI perspective. So it'll basically use Synaptic in the GNOME environment, and it will also use Discover in KDE and maybe Synaptic in KDE, because I might install Synaptic in KDE as well, because Synaptic is just better, in my opinion, than everything else out there, because it gives you a complete perspective of what packages are actually available, whereas Discover kind of hides some things in its effort to look pretty. So after that, we're going to do App Software Management Advanced, and I want to clarify here that I will not be touching Aptitude at all, because I don't use Aptitude. I have no idea how it even works. I just use apt and apt-get, mostly apt if I can help it, because it's the newer solution. But there are still some apt-get, apt-cache, apt-file commands that are important to me. So on occasion I'll still use them, and I'll talk about them in the video. But the goal of that video is that when you get done watching it, you will use apt like a ninja. You will be able to fix your system if you completely break it, that sort of thing. So that's going to be a very in-depth video, and I actually look forward to that one. I actually am probably going to end up doing part 2s to this as well, Vi and Vim introduction, which, by the way, the coverage on Vi will be how to upgrade it to Vim, because you should be using Vim. So Vim is Vi improved, and it really is improved, and everybody should be using Vim. Because I'm a firm believer that the keys on the keyboard should do what the keys on the keyboard say they should do. If a key looks like an arrow, then it should make the cursor move in that direction. That's my argument for Vim. And for those of you who use Vi, you know what I'm talking about. So Vi and Vim, for those of you who don't know, that's a text editor. And if you're going to do desktop-focused work, you probably don't need to use Vi or Vim ever. You can probably get away with never touching you can actually get away with not touching the command line generally. It might be necessary for you to use Nano, which is a very basic command line text editor. But if you really want to do serious command line text editing, which is very powerful, you want to use Vim. Or Emacs if you're one of those, but this series will not cover Emacs, mostly because I don't know how Emacs even begins to work, and I couldn't describe it to anyone if I tried. So we're gonna do Vim, and we're gonna go from there. Yeah. So eventually, I want to do, actually, I don't think it's on this list because I don't think I added it yet, but I want to do a very advanced Vim introduction, or a very advanced Vim video as well, somewhere on this list that will show you things like advanced find and replace techniques, and you know, some other things like that will be just really, really nice features to have, how to do macro recording, that sort of stuff, so that you can really take advantage of powerful stuff in Vim and be able to edit like a pro. So I think I want to cover that, plus some neat little shortcuts and tricks that I found in Vim in Vim that will help you along your way. And I may even do another video later on Vundle, which is a Vim plugin manager, to show you guys how to do that. Although I know there are other good tutorials out there for that, so I might just point you at those if I find one I like, to save myself the work. But if I think I can do a good job or a better job, then I'll try to do it. After that, we're going to do command line intermediate, which again, I also want to make a part 2 of that, well, really a part 3 at this point, of that video later on as well, that is also not on this list. I just haven't figured out where I want to put it yet. That will be advanced and will include shell scripting and stuff. But this one's going to be more like advanced commands, how to do command piping, how to really powerfully control your system, command filters, which is more stuff about piping, advanced input, output, that sort of stuff. What I'll probably do is an expert command line video that will show you things like how to iterate over a file and get text on each line into the file, and then do some operation on each line of text. So like for instance, if you had a file with a list of IP addresses and you wanted to ping each one, I would show you how to iterate over that list and then get what you want from it. So I'll do that probably later on in the series as well. But that's the command line intermediate video. We'll focus more on just advanced command line things. Probably not the looping thing, but just more advanced stuff like piping and command reader and output redirection and that sort of thing. I'll also probably touch on some stuff that's not safe, commands that you should probably avoid, because I think that's a big mistake or mishap that people make when they run Linux for the first time, is they issue a command that they really should not be typing in. And the command line is kind of it fully believes you know what you're doing, and it's going to do what you ask it in many cases. So if you tell it to completely destroy itself, it'll say yes sir. So I'm going to teach you how to avoid those scenarios in the intermediate command line video. Then we're going to talk about SSH and SSH configuration. So how to set up SSH keys, how to do SSH copy ID and move your keys out to other locations so you can SSH in without passwords. Proper security things for SSH, considerations, concerns, that sort of thing. We'll go into that, and hopefully you'll come out with a very good working knowledge of SSH. I may also target and talk about SCP and that sort of thing, so secure copy, and how to move files around. And I may even do how to copy through a proxy. So for instance, if you have like a jump server, so you have to hit this one box in order to get to the rest of the network, I'll show you how you can be on your computer and then you can proxy through that one box in the middle and then SCP the file directly to the target system on the other side of that jump server. There is a way to do that, and I'll show you how. It's pretty cool. So then there's the file system, the Linux file system. So I think a lot of videos don't really touch on this the way I like. But the initial video, the beginner version, will be a GUI perspective of the file system. It'll answer basic questions like where the heck is my C drive, and why don't I have a program files directory? Where are programs installed? Where do things normally go when I tell them to install? That sort of thing. Because that was a question I had when I first started using Linux, and the answer was always very vague, like, I don't really know, mostly. So I'm going to do a deep dive on that, and I'm going to answer all those questions. And I'm going to do it in the beginner video, because the advanced video is going to show you even more cool stuff, like what types of files there are, sim linking, and how to do hard links, and what hard links are, and what inodes are, and all that kind of cool stuff. I'm really going to do a serious deep dive on the file system because I think it needs to be done. I don't think there's enough of those out there right now. Lvm Storage, I'm going to cover that. Lvm Storage is logical volume management. For those of you wondering if I'm going to do ZFS or ButterFS, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do ButterFS because I tried ButterFS one time and I lost a lot of data because of it. Yeah, when I did a migration from one server stack to another server stack, there was exactly one file system that did not come up, and it was ButterFS. All the ext4 ones work fine, so ButterFS is kind of out for me. I don't trust it anymore, really. And I understand that it's kind of new and that it doesn't really have its stuff together yet, but you have one bad experience with something, it puts a bad taste in your mouth. I've heard ZFS is really cool. I have not tried it yet. I'm not going to go into it because of that. We're going to cover logical volume management here and ext4 here. That's it. We're not going to touch XFS. That's a Red Hat thing, and I don't believe in it. So, not that you can't use XFS on Debian. You can. I just don't believe in it. So anyway, users, groups, and permissions, we're going to cover that. So that's going to tell you how to basically set up a user, how to set up a group, how to join that user to the group. It's going to cover the basic read, write, execute permissions, and the world, or the user group and world permissions, or everyone permissions. that you see on a standard Linux file system. And it's going to do it mostly from a GUI perspective if I can help it. I may dabble in the command line there, but generally it's going to be all from the GUI. From the command line, I'm going to show you the advanced file system permissions, which is going to go into set UID, sticky bit, set GID, and what those do and how to set them. It's going to go into advanced chown and chmod commands, so how to actually set ownership and modify permissions on your file system and files, how to do it recursively, how to do it safely so you don't break your whole system. Hint, don't 777 your whole file system. It won't boot after you do that, so please don't do that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into access control lists, and I may touch on SE Linux and AppArmor if possible. Although I'm not 100% sure I'm going to do those two, mostly because I don't have as much in-depth knowledge of AppArmor as I really should. I know SE Linux oddly better, and SE Linux is not as applicable to Debian because Debian tends to be AppArmor specific, especially if you're going to use what they call snaps. If you're going to use a snap, you need to use AppArmor, not SE Linux. And so that's a big issue there. But I might touch on it if I can. Maybe I'll do some research and see if I can do a better sort of thing. But I don't know that I know enough about it to really do the video in a way that would make me happy. So there's a chance I might defer to somebody else to give me that information. I'm not sure yet on how I'm going to tackle that one, but we'll work it out. But the main thing is it's going to cover the basic file system privileges, some more advanced versions of the basic file system privileges, and it's also going to cover access control lists, which are very important. And then the next bit we're going to talk about is processes and process management. And we're going to hit on the task managers in the various GUI interfaces, so the KDE version of it and the GNOME interface version of it, and how to kill tasks, how to see what the tasks are doing, that sort of thing. And then we're going to go into process and process management advanced, which is going to cover more advanced process management, as you might have guessed. So like we're going to touch on top, we're going to touch on how to renice a process, what that really means, the renice levels. We're going to talk about how to see what processes are using what kind of memory, what processes own what kind of files on the system, which processes are holding a file open, all kinds of process management sort of stuff. We're also going to talk about kill, kill all, pgrep and pkill, because those are very important commands, specifically pgrep and pkill, and the dreaded tac9 and the more sane tac15. We're going to talk about those subjects in the advanced process management video. I think you guys will like that one because I'm going to try to do a more deep dive than you're probably used to on that topic as well. For networking, the beginner stuff, I'm going to talk about how to set IP addresses, how to basically configure your networking. I'm going to talk about it from a GNOME perspective and a KDE perspective, as most of these videos are going to be in the beginner series. And then I might show you kind of where the network settings files are and in the command line, and that's really it. In the advanced section, I'll show you how to set up the network from the command line. I'll show you about the ncurse's NMTUI tool. And I'll teach you how to do bridging and other advanced topics in networking there. Then we're going to cover file system mounts and map drives. So what that's basically going to do is tell you about network drives, how to mount them, how to mount a CD-ROM, that sort of thing. The good news is most of that stuff is completely automatic now. But we're going to talk about it anyway. We're going to talk about how it really works. We're going to talk about how to do it from a GNOME and a KDE perspective. And I may touch on the CLI mount command and the fstab command, or the fstab file, should I say, the etc fstab file, which is basically where your system mounts stuff. It's basically a list of stuff your system can mount on boot. And then I'm going to talk about the advanced version of that, which will go more in depth into fstab. It'll also talk about auto mounters like AutoFS. I may talk about system demounting and PAM mounting, that sort of thing. I'm not really 100% sure what all I'm going to cover there. It depends on how long I want the video to be, but that's sort of the goal. And then for firewall, I'm obviously going to talk about firewalls. So the basic one will be Firewall D. Firewall D's command or GUI interface. So I'll show you how to install that, how to configure it, how to manipulate the zones, how to set certain ports open, that sort of thing. Advanced will cover the command line for firewall D a little bit. I'm going to touch on it. I'm also going to show you advanced IP table stuff and how to do, and I might touch on NF tables a little bit, although I'm not as familiar with NF tables, so I can't really go as deep as I want to with that. So I might just mention it briefly and more focus on IP tables for now. I'm also going to do Open SSL and certificate requests. So I'm going to teach you how to generate a private key and then a CSR, submit that to a certificate authority, get your certificate back, that sort of thing. I'll also teach you how to verify that certificates are cryptographically matching, so that they, you can say this key pair works, it's functional, that sort of stuff. I'm going to go into Apache web servers, how to install one, some cool stuff you can do with it, that sort of thing. How to set what ports listening on, how to set up OpenSSL, or how to set up the SSL, so 443 encryption on it properly, how to get a decent score on quality SSL, that sort of thing. It'll be very in-depth. Another thing I want to do is talk about Wine and Play on Linux and the best way to do that. This will be from a desktop perspective, so you'll get to see Play on Linux and how to install Windows software on Linux, on the Linux platform. Of course, there's also the Steam Play thing that they're doing now. I might touch on it. I don't know. We'll kind of see where that goes. And the reason I say might is because it's mostly self-explanatory. There's like 2 checkboxes you can hit to get the whole list instead of just what's whitelisted. And after that, you just click install, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's sort of the gist of that one. There's really not much to it. But I will give you a brief overview of Play on Linux because a surprising number of people do not seem to know about it, and that's just sad because Play on Linux is great. Also, this neglects Lutris. The reason I neglect it is because I don't use it. I have no idea how it even works. So we're going to stick with Play on Linux for my videos, and if ever I discover Lutris for myself and actually use it, then maybe I'll go over it. But right now, I just use Play on Linux. It works wonderfully for me. So we're going to go there with that because that's already prepackaged in Debian anyway. And then we're going to talk about virtualization, Virt Manager, and virtualization desktop from a desktop perspective. So I'll show you Virt Manager and that sort of thing. And then I'm going to show you KVM and virtualization from a server perspective. And in that video, I'll also go back to the desktop version and show you Virt Manager and how to connect remotely to that KVM installation on a server so that you can remotely manage your VMs using Virt Manager, even though you don't have a GUI or Virt Manager installed on the remote machine. You're just using KVM and QEMU and that sort of stuff. So it's going to be a cool little virtualization experiment. It's not going to be OpenStack, so don't get excited. I don't have as much experience as I would like with OpenStack just yet, although I'm trying to work on that. But that's why I'm going to neglect to do OpenStack for now. So maybe a future video if I get the experience I want out of it. We'll see. But for now, that's the playlist. Of course, these videos are not set in stone. This list probably will be altered and amended, and there probably will be videos added. Maybe some taken out, but mostly added, I suspect. What I would like to ask the community to do for me is to give me suggestions on what kind of videos they would like to see if this list is inclusive of everything, or if there's stuff they want to see. Feel free to ask about pretty much anything too, because I'm pretty versatile. I'm generally pretty equipped to handle a lot of different scenarios. So if you guys have general questions, I can probably ask them. Other cool things I'd like to do on the channel are open it up like for maybe do a question and answer sort of things where people can ask questions. About me or about why I choose to use Linux or Linux related questions or philosophical stuff. It doesn't even have to be technical. If you guys have questions for me, I would love to answer them. So feel free to ask whatever questions you like if you'd like to see that answered in a video. Also, if there's anybody else out there, I have one guy who said he wanted to do some translations for me, but my videos are designed to help everybody equally, no matter what walk of life they happen to come from. And I think language is a big barrier to that, and that is depressing. I am very American in that I only speak English, and that too is really sad. I mean, I know some words from other languages, like I know a touch of German. I know a handful of German words. I know a handful of Arabic words. I know a handful of Russian words. I know a handful of French words. I even know like one Mandarin word, I think. If there's a language I know the most of, it's probably Japanese. And that's just due to the sheer amount of media exposure I get from Japanese video games and anime and manga, because I'm a nerd. And so, you know, I don't have the ability to translate any of my work into other languages, and that to me is frustrating because I would love to do that. So, unfortunately, I don't really have the time or the. I learn by doing. So if I had somebody who spoke a particular language with me a lot, I would probably be able to pick it up. But I'm not the kind of person who can read a book and learn a language. That's not a thing. Like, even when I learn computer programming languages, I have to have the compiler up, and I have to actually be programming in the language, otherwise I won't remember any of it. So, unfortunately, I don't have anybody who speaks any other languages with me on a regular basis, so it's hard for me to learn them. And I certainly don't know any of them well enough to be able to translate anything I'm doing into any other languages. So I guess if I'm saying anything, it's that subtitles are absolutely welcome. If you speak English and some other language and you want to translate and add subtitles to my video, it would be an honor to accept them. And it would help me further my goal of helping as many people as I absolutely can with this work, because I don't want language to be a barrier to that. And unlike many other English speakers out there, I don't think that English is the only language and that it's the only language that should be spoken. I actually don't even think it's a particularly good language to speak or teach. Like, I think a lot of people think their own language is really, really great. Right up until they try to teach it to a child, and then they realize all the flaws in it. And that's where I'm at right now. So, yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is I want to be able to support as many people as I can with this work. So, if you're interested in submitting subtitles, it would be amazing. I guess that's really it. If you guys have any suggestions for videos that you want to see, topics that you want to see in this list, please suggest them in the comments. If anybody contributes anything, I will absolutely give you credit, probably in the comments of the video, and maybe in the next video that I make, I'll also try to, give credit to people who want it. Some people requested to remain anonymous, and I want to respect their wishes, so I will hold back on those. But if you do want to, have me mention your name in a video or put you in the comments somewhere, yeah, let me know, absolutely, and I'm not adverse to doing that at all. I believe fully that people should get the credit they deserve. So if you go through the work of subtitling my video, let me know who you are, and I'll put you in the comments. And that's really it. I thank you guys for watching, and I hope that this series can be successful, and I hope you guys learn a lot from it. Thank you.